Hey, what's happening, everybody? It's me, Crazyfrankie, and I'd like to welcome you to my Thanksgiving edition, my Week 12 4 key game picks. Before I talk about week number 12 and my quick thoughts, we could finally get a look into the playoff picture right now. Beginning in the AFC, current standings up until this week. The Pittsburgh Steelers still hold the 1 seed, the New England Patriots the 2nd seed, the Jacksonville Jaguars the 2nd seed, the Kansas City Chiefs the 4th seed, and rounding up the wildcard spots for the moment for the 5 and 6 seeds is the Titans and the Ravens. In the NFC, the Eagles are the number 1 seed at the moment, the Vikings are the number 2 seed, the New Orleans Saints are the 3rd seed, the LA Rams are the 4th seed, and rounding out the wildcard spots 5 and 6 are the Panthers and the Falcons. So that's your current standings up until now, as we're getting closer and closer to the end of the regular season. All right, quick thoughts from week number 11. Very little to say what happens here. Only a couple things that come into my mind right now. Cowboys pretty much, now look, I know I'm going to receive some sort of backlash here, and I know a lot of you are going to say, well, the Cowboys are still in it and all, and technically they are. They're 5-5, they're not, but technically right now, they basically have no shot now to win the NFC East. I mean, the only thing the Cowboys can fight for now is a wild card spot, and it may be too little too late for them, the way things are going with this team. I mean, key injuries have really hurt this team. Not only that, no Ezekiel Elliott because of suspension has really hurt this Cowboys team. I mean, they got blown out last week by the Eagles. And it doesn't help their cause. With them being outside the playoff picture right now, it's really going to come down to really, I mean, they were considered a favorite to win the division, let alone to get farther. But everything basically has gone wrong for this Cowboys team. Even despite having most of their players in, even when Ezekiel Elliott was not even in suspension, they still struggled. So obviously there is some sophomore jinx in Dark Prescott. So yeah, pretty much Cowboys, they're pretty much done. I think they're pretty much done. Even though they're 5-5, I consider them pretty much done. Even if they were to somehow make a run. I just think that with the power right now, the way the standings are in the NFC, the Cowboys got too much to overcome, and I don't see them even getting to that point. Steelers and Patriots, I pretty much considered for the moment now the class of the AFC conference. I mean, they basically blew out their opponents. Pittsburgh winning big against the Titans, and the Raiders basically, the Raiders getting destroyed by the Patriots in Mexico City, which was an embarrassment. I mean, they fired Ken Norton Jr., the defensive coordinator, which they should have done a long time ago. But you really can't put all the blame on him and all. I mean, their defense really was that bad. I mean, for the time being right now, I look at the teams that you really think that consider to be shoo-ins for the playoffs, the Raiders being one of them. They're pretty much falling out of contention. They're falling out of contention fast, even though the AFC West still is competitive. What's even another shocking thing, well, look, I'm not going to get ahead of myself on this point here, that in that conference, the one team that's sort of making a little bit of noise, even though they've lost so much, and I ain't going to get my hopes up on this, is really the Chargers. Despite their troubles all season long, I mean, they're still in that division as well for a wildcard spot. But in that conference alone, I mean, I'm not going to get too ahead of myself. Even though the Chiefs losing to the Giants was kind of a big deal because it does make the rest of the AFC West a little more interesting. But I just think, to me, with the majority of the losses between the Broncos, the Chargers, and the Raiders, I still think Kansas City is going to run away with the rest of the division, even though despite their woes. I do agree that defensive-wise, they're starting to fall apart on defense here. And their offense, I don't know where their offense has been. But if you look at the rest of the way in terms of both conferences, literally, Pittsburgh, New England are technically the class of the AFC. I don't see anybody stopping these two teams from reaching the Super Bowl. Whoever wins between those two teams, I can guarantee you, is probably going to end up in the Super Bowl. In the NFC, it's pretty wide open. The Eagles may be the class right now for the time being, but they're only one game ahead of the Vikings and the Saints for the number 1 seed. So really, it is really going to come down to the final weeks of the regular season. who will be the team that will have the home field in that conference, because the conference is really that tight in terms of standings. Anyways, let's get into my picks now for week number 12. Key game number 1 will be one of the Thanksgiving games. It is the Vikings and the Lions. The Vikings did a fantastic job. Their defense really held the Rams at bay last week, and Case Keenum really played very good, but not to a point where it was all domination. I mean, really, their running game was really the key, and some special teams plays that really gave the Vikings the win last week against the Rams. Case Keenum, 27 of 38, 280 yards and 1 touchdown. So really, he didn't have to do all that much to beat the Rams. Now the Lions, what can I say about the Lions here? They barely beat the Bears last week, and really their offense and defense on both sides of the ball, technically, they're not that good. Stafford last week winning 21 of 31, 299 yards and 2 touchdown passes. Really was their defense really that kind of really... I mean, the Lions should have easily beaten the Bears, but really, if they had a defense, if the Lions had a defense, it wouldn't have been this much of an issue. Now, Minnesota is favored in this game, which I forgot to write down the points on my keynote paper, but they will be posted up in the captions. I'm very sorry about this, guys. I'm doing all of this in one take, so I want to get this done because tomorrow I'm going to be extremely busy heading in towards the Thanksgiving holiday, and this is kind of a very, very desperate quick video that I have to do here before I will be unavailable for Thanksgiving. So yeah, look for the point spread in the caption. I apologize, I forgot to write this down on my notes, but I need to do this all in one take because I will not have any time tomorrow to do this. And of course, you got the Thanksgiving holiday on Thursday. Anyways, going back to this. The Minnesota is favored in this game. And no question, this is kind of an easy pick. You got to go with the Minnesota Vikings here. The Vikings offense and defense is, I have to admit, they are that good. And the Lions are going to have their hands full in this game. I don't see the Lions beating the Vikings here. The Vikings are a much better team here on both sides of the ball. And this is why you got to go with the Minnesota Vikings here. I think the Vikings will easily win this game here. Yeah. Vikings is going to be too much for the Lions to handle. And I'm sticking with the Vikings here. Vikings over the Lions. Key game number 2. The other Thanksgiving game in Dallas. And this is kind of a strange here. I'm going to be actually talking about this game. Chargers against the Cowboys. Believe it or not, the Chargers are actually favored in this game. I think it's just by a point, but come on. Look, as much as I've followed the majority of all the NFL teams as much as possible. I mean, the one thing that I keep scratching my head really is the LA Chargers here. A team that you would think that maybe they'll turn it around this year, but let's face the facts here. I don't know why I'm talking about this, but because the only reason why I bring this game up is because this is a very important game for the Cowboys here to mathematically stay alive in the playoff hunt. Now, for the Chargers, I mean, they basically beat up a Buffalo Bills team that really, their coach don't know what the heck he was doing last week. I mean, Tyrod Taylor was benched the first half of that game, and then he had to come into the second half in a game that completely got out of hand. The Chargers ended up blowing out Buffalo by 30 points. But in this game here, yeah, let's look at some key stats here. Rivers last week went 20 of 32. He didn't have to do much. 251 yards and 2 touchdown passes. Now, Prescott, he played terribly last week, only going 18 of 31, 145 yards and 3 interceptions. Now, you would think that, look, I can understand the odds makers making the Chargers a slight favorite in this game. But the Chargers' offensive line is still, I consider, a terrible offensive line. Rivers has been sacked a lot this season, even though despite them beating Buffalo last week by a huge margin. But this Charger team, I don't really think they're pretty much not going anywhere. They're still even though despite their standings at 4 and 6 and in second place in the AFC West, really the AFC West technically now has gotten into it's become now a bad division. Cowboys, this is a must-win game for them to keep their slim playoff hopes alive, as their record is at 5-5. This game's a toss-up here. This game could go either way, but you have to pick the Cowboys here. This will definitely be a close game. There's no question I can see this game being close. But I like the Cowboys in this one. They'll probably win by a field goal because the Chargers' offensive line is really horrible. I don't know. Rivers has to get rid of the football in like less than 3 seconds, and he's been throwing a lot of interceptions all year long. And I just don't see them beating the Cowboys here. The Cowboys will keep their playoff hopes alive with the victory here against the Chargers, and I see it happening here. This is why you got to go with the Cowboys. Sorry, Cowboys over the Chargers. Key game number 3. This is actually a big one here. We're gonna stay out west. It's gonna be the New Orleans Saints and the Rams. Saints and Rams. This should be a good one here. I expect this game to be good. Saints defense struggled last week against the Redskins. I mean, they had to come from behind to beat them in overtime. And for their defense here, they're going to have to really come up big against a pretty good offense that the Rams have. Do I see a shootout in this game? Yes, I do. I do see this game being a shootout here. Drew Brees last week went 29-41, 385 yards, 2 touchdown passes, and 1 interception. Jared Goff last week for the Rams, 23 of 37, 225 yards. Luckily, no interceptions. This is going to be a battle of offense here, and I see that in this game. Big one here. I think the Saints are a slight favorite in this one, but don't be surprised if this game gets even closer. I expect the shootout here in this game. Yes, I do. I think that both defenses are going to struggle here. And who wins this game here? The Saints kind of have the better offense here. Defense-wise, both teams are pretty even. But when it comes to offense here, I like the Saints here. I think the Saints are going to beat the Rams here. The Rams struggles. I mean, don't get me wrong. This is really not a sure pick here because both teams have good offense, but their defense is average. But I'm actually going to go with the Saints here. I think the Saints continue their winning streak here, and they've just been on fire here, and they're one of the teams that are aiming for that number 1 seed as well. They currently have They currently have the 2 seed in terms for that's a bye week for the playoffs. But they're obviously aiming for a much higher spot, and that's the number 1 seed. The Rams right now, they're just trying to hang on to the NFC West, and they were lucky that the Seahawks lost last week to maintain that 1-game edge. But when it comes to this game between these two teams, between the Saints and the Rams, I'm going to go with the Saints here. I just think the Saints offense is just a tad better than the Rams is. But I expect a good game here. I think we're in for a shootout. This may be the game of the week right here. I say that a lot, and last week I thought last week's game between the Vikings and the Rams was going to be the game of the week, and it ended up being a joke. But this is the game I think this game will make up for it. I think this will be probably the game of the week here. But I'm going to stay with my pick. I'm going to say the Saints over the Rams. And finally, key game number 4, it is the Green Bay Packers and the Pittsburgh Steelers. Looking at the schedule here, when I looked at what the schedule was in terms of 4 key games, because remember, my whole concept of this video is 4 key games. Pittsburgh's heavily favored in this game, I think by 14 points, I think. And why am I talking about this game if this game seems to be lopsided? This is an important game for the Packers here. They're barely maintaining a 500 record at 5-5, and they are in danger of falling out of the playoffs right now, especially with the fact that Aaron Rodgers is still hurt. And knowing Aaron Rodgers, he wants to get back in this thing to lead the Packers in the playoffs. But if the Packers offense keeps playing the way they did, I mean, they lost to the Ravens 23-0. They got shut out, and Hundley didn't even do that much in that game. His stats were 21 of 36, 239 yards, but intercepted 3 times last week. Green Bay desperately needs a quarterback, and Hundley is not it. Their defense didn't even help last week either. They were basically embarrassed by Joe Flacco. Now the Steelers, They're, like I said earlier in the video, they are the class of the AFC at the moment. I mean, they destroyed the Titans last week. Roethlisberger going 30 of 45, 299 yards, and 4 touchdown passes. Their offense is just that good, and I'm picking the Steelers here. Green Bay's playoff chances, they're dwindling fast. And you would have to force Aaron Rodgers. Despite him, he's still really hurt. I mean, if the Packers force Rodgers to come back early to at least try to make this some kind of a run, I just think Aaron Rodgers just needs to just wait till next season, because this is not worth the risk to risk. I know he's a good quarterback, but to risk, that could be a career-ending injury if he ends up getting hurt again. But out of subject here, Pittsburgh's got the much better offense, and you got to go with the Steelers here. Green Bay just doesn't have enough, and it's going to be pretty bad in Pittsburgh for Green Bay. It's going to be pretty bad for Green Bay and Pittsburgh. And that's why this is an easy pick here. You got to go with the Steelers here. Kind of hard to pick 4 key games when a lot of the schedule, I mean, looking at the lines, I mean, I only had a glance at it, but I forgot to write it on my paper here. A lot of these games look to be lopsided in this whole schedule. But anyways, guys, this is already a long enough video as it is. Steelers over the Packers. Let me end my video here. Check out for all of my Week 12 picks. Go to dsportblog.blogspot.com. Sorry, guys, that I took too long in this video, and I jabber-jabbered a lot during this video. It was I needed to get this video in fast because of the Thanksgiving holiday. I'm going to be busy the rest of the week. Anyways, guys, I will see you guys next week. Have a happy Thanksgiving to every one of you guys, and especially all those who continue to watch my videos. And I'll see you guys next week when I talk about my picks for week number 13. Take care.